Come to order. And tonight we have Peter to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you would do that, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic which spread one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good job. Thank you.
In front of you, you have an agenda. Is there any additions or correction, any additions to the agenda? Could I have a motion to approve? Second. Been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Recognitions.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to recognize the FFA Livestock Judging Team results at the Black Hills Stock Show. They placed 10th overall in teams, and Jace Rich placed 15th in individuals. And I think I missed this earlier in the year, and I apologize, but Maggie Unterscher has received National Board Certification. And for those of you who don't know, that's a rigorous process that demands a lot of dedication and hard work. Fewer than 10% of teachers nationwide are nationally certified, and I believe Wyoming has about 600. And I also think she's our third. Is that right? Ms. Karp, Ms. Beeler. I think she's our third. Anyway, it's a really big deal. Aaron. Oh, Aaron. So for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other recognitions? Mrs. Holmes.
All right, thank you. First, I would like to recognize our February good citizens, Brooklyn Hoffman, Alyssa Hunter, and Corbin Stout, and then also thank the VFW, Weston County Health Services, and Farnsworth Services for sponsoring that. And then this week is National School Counselor Week, so I would especially like to recognize Candace Watt and Jenny Peterson, who work with our students at the elementary, but they're all important across the district. So
Thank you, Brandy. Bryce?
I would just add on to the school counselor week. Jenny does a lot of work in our building along with Mike Gregory. And so thank you for all that they do for us. Just to add on to Dana's piece with the FFA results, the team that placed 10th overall consists of Jace Rich, Reagan Redding, Aiden Butler, Ty Stith, and Bailey Griffin. And so they're all freshmen or sophomores. So that's pretty cool that they did that well in an event that had 42 teams. And then I had Jace's 10th overall individual, and he's a freshman. So that's pretty cool to go compete with that many teams and do that well. And then last week, we had the regional science fair that we hosted at the high school. I sent you the list of the award winners, and there's a boatload, so I won't read all of those off to you, but hats off to Mr. Beam, Mr. Stith, and Mr. Scribner, because that's a lot of work to put that together. And then just thank you to all the judges from the community that come and support that event.
Thank you. Any other recognitions? Oh, I didn't see you back there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Of course, would add Nikki Bloom to the list of counselors in our district that do a great job. I also have a few staff members that I would recognize. I would just say going above and beyond lately. So first would be Jolisa Wainscott, who's our speech language pathologist. And I think you guys know she's got a pretty extensive caseload of students that receive special ed services through speech. But lately we've even been tagging her just to help some other kids that are general ed kids that want some help with presentations and different things that are happening. And in her very busy schedule, she's squeezing things in and just she's doing what it takes to help kids. So I recognize Jolisa. Mandy McDade over here in the office. I was working on something for SR2 and getting some documentation in order for WDE. I called Mandy and asked about it like a half hour later. She had been to something called the archives. I didn't know we had an archives. I don't know. We keep everything apparently somewhere. And Mandy knew. She took care of it. She got it to us. We got an approval. We're going to take care of some things for the wood shop, thanks to her help and some other people's help. But so shout out to her. And then I don't know if you want to tell PTSB this. But we've recognized our nurses a lot for what Allison and Jesse do. But if you want to know how above and beyond they go sometimes, last Friday, we had some unexpected illnesses on top of activities and everything else. And so Jessie Stearns was there teaching high school band for us not too long ago. Because turns out she's a former band student here at NHS and she could jump right in and help. And so just, again, going above and beyond all the other parts of their job. So I had to recognize her as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to recognize a few people who've helped with our Special Olympics team. I don't know if skiing is a dying sport, but if you want to ski, we need help. So Shanae Alberts, Nikki Bloom, and Sally Cord come and help us. And then our regulars, Chad Austinson and Candy Stanton, they keep that program going. So
Any other recognitions? You have them? Okay. Paul?
Mr. Chair,
There you go.
Mr. Chair, we received an email from my understanding concerning Melissa Sisk and Mrs. Finley and the outstanding job that they have done with special ed students at the grade school. I didn't mention it to begin with because I didn't want to step on any toes if anybody else wanted to recognize them, but this is actually the fourth time I've been contacted about the outstanding job that she's done by parents. So I think that they should be recognized. That's really saying something when parents want to contact all the school board members over something positive. That's a nice change. I've only been here a short time, but that's really cool. And I would also like to tie into Mr. Hoffman. I was one of those who was fortunate enough to judge the science contest, and what an incredible bunch of students that we have. The amount of talent on display was really incredible, and those three science teachers deserve all of our thanks because they are absolutely phenomenal at what they do. So, Mr. Hoffman, congratulations on having three outstanding science teachers.
Everyone can do it.
Thank you, Paul. Any other recognitions? Seeing none, we'll move on. And this is the highlight of the year almost, I would say. Our first grade readers, and I don't know who wants to. Mrs. Holmes, do you want to introduce them, please?
I'll just introduce the first grade teachers and then
Okay.
let them introduce their students. So we have Mr. Nick Gray, Miss is Denise Ehlers, and Mrs. Jade McConkey. So come on down, you get the mic.
Okay, and I have Theodore Williamson. He is going to be reading what's called a super duper magazine from our reading series called The Super Kids, and it is called Vroom.
And Alice Keeler also has a book from our Super Kids series. This is one of our library books that we have available for the kids to read, and it is Benjamin's Octopus. Very awkward.
Kids like dogs, kids like cats. Kids like chickens. Cluck, chickens? Yes, I am the best pet. Chickens are fun. Chickens like hugs. Chickens like bugs. Chickens like to run on soft grass. Chickens like to nap in a snug hut. But you must lock the hut or a fox can grab a chicken and run. Yum. Chickens are not dull or drab. This chicken has spots. This chicken has a big fluff on top. This chicken has fluff on its legs. This chicken has a ruff. In fact, chickens are just fantastic. Wow, bow, wow. A chicken begins in an egg. A hen sits and sits on her eggs. Tap, 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 tap. At last, the eggs hatch. I did it. It is difficult to pick just one chicken for a pet. A big flock of chickens is the best bet. Pick 6 chickens, 7.
So when I asked Andy what she liked about this book, she said she loved that it was about chickens. Mom, there may be some chickens in your future.
Vroom. Drivers, 2 cars. The race car drivers are waving to the fans at the track. It is time to strap on helmets and get in the cars. Helpers buckle the drivers into the cockpits. Drivers put a hand up when they are set. Done, they are off. The race cars go hug the track as they go faster and faster. 10 laps of the track, 50 laps and 100 laps and still at it. The drivers want to drive as fast as they can, but not crash. Race car drivers must take tests to show what they can do. They must be very skilled to pass. Only the best drivers can drive in the fastest races. Race car drivers are not like other cars. This car looks a little bit like a rocket. A car can have a wing on the front and on the back. These wings help the cars go fast. White tires have race cars have very white tires. White tires help the car grip the track. A wide tire will not skid as much as a thin tire. A race car can crash or slam into another car. Race cars must be very strong to be safe. The drivers make pit stops in the middle of the race. In a pit stop, the driver stops the car, helpers lift up the car and put on different tires as they fill the tank with gas. Pit stops are quick. Helpers must finish fast. Then it's time for the drivers to get back on the track and go, go, go. Vroom. The checkered flag waves as the fastest car drives across the finish line. This is the winner. And it has race cars in it.
And he knew right away which magazine he wanted to read. He wanted to read the Vroom one, so we picked it out right away, and he did a great job.
Benjamin's octopus. Benjamin went to bed at 8 o'clock. As he slept, he had a dream. Benjamin was in the sea in this dream. He swam and swam with lots of sea animals. When Benjamin got up, his bed had a big lump in it. What is that? Ben said. It was an octopus. How did you get in my bed? Said Benjamin. I was in that dream you had, said the octopus. Then I swam back with you. What an odd home you have. I like it, but where are the fish? The octopus hunted for fish in the bed. Then he hunted in the closet. Stop, said Benjamin. What a mess. What is this little thing? Said the octopus. That is a sock, said Ben. I like socks. The octopus put on Ben's socks. Then he put on Mom's best sandals. No, said Benjamin. Mom will get mad. But the octopus just said, when is lunch? I like fish best. The octopus got 6 boxes of fish sticks for lunch. He did not like the muffins, but he did like Mom's hat. Yum, he said. He had the hat for a snack. Then he went for a swim in the kitchen sink. Benjamin, Mom said, what is this? No messes in my kitchen. You and your pal will have to mop this up. He's not my pal, said Benjamin. He's an octopus. But I am your pal, said the octopus. I like you. And I like to scrub and pick up. Hand me that mop. That was fast, thanks, Ben said. I have to admit you are okay for an octopus, but you do not belong in the kitchen. I've just the spot for a pal who likes to splash. Ben put the octopus in the bathtub. Bubbles, said the octopus. Ben and his octopus had fun with Bubbles until the sun set. At last, Benjamin and his octopus went to bed. As Ben slept, he had a dream. In this dream, the octopus and Ben went on a trip across the sea. Fish, lots of fish, said the octopus. I like you, Benjamin, but not as much as I like fish. I have to jump in. Benjamin got a big, big hug. Then the octopus flung himself into the sea. Ben was a little sad, but just a little. Ben went across the sea and landed in the jungle. In his jungle dream, Benjamin got lost. He had to hunt for a path to get back home. Benjamin got up at 7 o'clock. His bed had a little lump in it. It was not the octopus. It was a banana. How did that get in my bed? Benjamin said. Uh-oh.
What did you like about that book? Next, we have Allison Yee, who is our board attorney. So if you would. That'd be fine. Is that comfortable? Wherever you're comfortable, I don't care. But you got to use the microphone.
Zoom cannot hear you.
You got to turn it on.
Okay. I'll hear it. They can hear it? Okay. Hi, I'm Allison Gee. I have been the attorney for this district for 2-3 years. And most of you probably haven't ever seen me here before, which is not a bad thing. But we have been talking, I've been chatting with various issues that have been going on with the district, and it seemed like you had a lot of newer board members and that maybe it'd be helpful to do some legal training. And so that's part of what I'd like to do tonight. And I don't know how much of this you want to do in executive versus in open session. I can go over at a high level some of the legal.
Whatever you think you need to do.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess, how I would start the conversation is I'm a Gillette native and I grew up rodeoing and I have ties to Newcastle because of that. And I do live in Gillette. The commute was a little dark and snowy this evening, but I made it. And I have an elementary ed special ed degree from the University of Wyoming, and then went on to law school. I've been practicing law since 2005. And I also represent Campbell County School District in addition to this school district and 3 other hospitals around the state with my partner, Tom Lubnow, who's been practicing since around when I was 4, I think. So I rubbed that in for him. Our philosophy as a law firm is that we're the board's attorneys. We don't make policy decisions. We don't insert ourselves into your process. You have to request our advice. Because if I tried to go out and fix everything that I thought should be a certain way, it would be taking away the power that the voters gave you when they elected you. We will tell you what's legal and what's not if you ask. We're happy to give you strategies of things that we have seen work well over our experience. And we represent the entire board, not just one board member. So if y'all have to go back to kindergarten, I'm not going to get in the middle of it. I'll tell you what the law is, right? And any requests for our services are made to us through the superintendent or the board chair. So hopefully that kind of helps you understand how you guys interact with our office if you need it. Some of the issues I wanted to go over with you tonight are the Wyoming Ethics and Disclosures Act, or what my partner Tom would call what you learned in kindergarten. You can't use your position for private benefit. You can't advocate for the district to hire a family member. And a lot of this is common sense, but it's good to go over it. It's based in statute. You cannot participate in supervision decisions over family members. You cannot use public funds, time, personnel, facilities, or equipment for private benefit. One of the examples of this that happens a lot that people don't think of is like just using the copier for something, or the postage machine maybe, right? Technically, it's public funds and you need to be good stewards of it. So that's why that rule's in place. And this next one's similar, but maybe has a little more wiggle room with schools because of the gyms and things. You cannot use the public facilities except as the public would, for example. You're not to use the public facilities time or money for political campaigns. That's an interesting one that from time to time comes up. And what I tell you is the role of the board is to educate when it comes to political issues, not to lobby. And so if there's an issue that comes up with the legislature, for example, that you as a board are passionate about, or the school district is, because you see how it's going to impact kids or funding or different things, then that would be a good example of putting together information and providing it to the whoever you need to educate. And then finally, I don't know if you all are completing the financial and conflict of interest disclosures. It's technically required of the top 5 officials that are elected in Wyoming, like the governor, secretary of state. But we find that it's helpful for boards to do that, to disclose what their business and financial interests are that might overlap in any way with the school district. Like if you're in the construction business and there's going to be something built, for example. And what that does is it allows the board chair to know if there's going to be an issue that comes up with the board, if you potentially would have a conflict, so that they can identify it ahead of time. So that's basically what you learned in kindergarten. I have a lot of more detailed information on conflict of interest, and I can go over that, but it's very clear that the legislature thought that that was something they should be concerned about, because there's like 5 different statutes on it. And there's a couple of them that create a misdemeanor even if you violate it. So my recommendation to board members is, if you think you have a conflict of interest, it probably appears to someone else that you do. And the best advice I could give you is to step out of the room when those discussions start to occur. And I have, some more detail on that, but one of the statutes says that you should absent yourself from the room. And the reason for that is, when you are present in the room for those discussions, it can appear that you are influencing the decision. And that's what these statutes intend to avoid, basically. So like, for example, Although Gillette's a bigger town, we still have a lot of overlap on, family and boards and things. So I am on the college board over there, and I am the attorney for the school district, and we have a BOCES. I don't know, do you guys have a BOCES? Yeah, so we have a BOCES, and the school district is a part of the BOCES, and the college is a part of the BOCES, and the college board was voting on it. Well, I think that's a conflict for me as the attorney for the school district to be voting on something, that I have an interest in. So I left the room for the discussion and the vote. That's just one example of, how you might have a conflict of interest and how you should handle it. So, and I can provide you the statutes for those. I think you all are pretty experienced here in budgeting and in the meeting requirements for the regular meeting, having agendas, having minutes, what a special meeting is. I don't know if you have very many special meetings. They do come up from time to time, and there are special rules on how much notice you need to give to the public for those if you do have one. And you're limited to the issues that you list in the agenda for those special meetings. There's also the Wyoming Public Records Act. Have you guys had any? Yeah. So the expansion of the use of email and online document creation has made the application of the Wyoming Public Records Act very interesting, and also very time consuming in a way it probably wasn't 30 years ago when you just call somebody or write a letter. So, if you feel like you need guidance on that, we're happy to provide it. I would suggest to my boards that I work with that everything that you write is potentially a public record. And there are a few exceptions, but I would just assume if you're writing something that the public may see it. So that's my best advice. As a publicly elected board, the school district has obligations to provide you with legal resources, and also if you're brought into litigation to help you, if you're acting within the scope of your role as a trustee, to help you with legal resources if there were ever litigation that you got pulled into because of your role as a board member. Hopefully that doesn't happen a lot here in Weston County, but we do see that happen from time to time. I know it's kind of boring. It's not as fun as the cookies and books, that's for sure. My daughter got the rock star of responsibility, and so she's been lording that title over her older brother all year, making sure he's being responsible. I love that you guys give opportunities for kids to get that recognition. It's great. And so, if questions come up on those sorts of things, and the reason I bring that up is it's a good reminder to you that when you act as a board. If you're out on your own as an individual member of this board doing something that's not the business of the district, you don't have that liability coverage of the district behind you. And so just remember, it's a good idea to make sure what you're doing is within the scope of what a board member should be doing. It's just, if you asked your insurance carrier, there are certain instances we've had over the years where the insurance companies won't cover things like, we have so many bad stories, sorry. But for example, a board member took executive session material and ran to the opposing counsel with it and provided it to them. You would think that that's a bad idea. It also creates issues because then they don't have insurance coverage for, the outfall from doing something like that. So, it's just a good idea to sort of stay in your lane best you can. And if you feel like it's risky, it's probably worth asking. So, in some cases, and I don't know if you've had any recent cases where the board has been the appellate body for a decision.
For a while.
Yeah, so from time to time, there are cases that may come before this board. And it's important that the board, to the extent it can, only receive very high level, non-detailed information until the appeal of whatever the decision is comes before this board. And there are statutes for that under the Wyoming Administrative Procedures Act. And basically it's to try and make sure that to the best we can, that you all are a fair place for those folks to come before you and have their case presented and to have you just make a decision. So sometimes it may feel like you're not getting the entire story on something, and there may be a good reason for that. And if you have that concern, ask. But it is important to make sure that you don't already have too much information and that both sides would get to present that case if that were to happen. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. And then as board members, you have 3 basic fiduciary duties that are kind of in statute, and they're also in the common law, which is case law. The first is the duty of loyalty. So what that looks like for you is that you can't use confidential information that you get in your role to harm the district, and that you must look out for the district's best interest as a board member. A duty of care, which means that you must ask the questions that a prudent person would to try and understand the issues that are before you. And the last is a duty of obedience, which means you need to follow the rules and regulations of the district and policies and local, state, and federal law, which is why I'm going over some of these for you in hopefully what is not too boring of a way. And then I also have some material on filling a board vacancy if that comes up, and it does from time to time. Yeah, so I thought that might be helpful material for you that I put together. So I have a few issues that I wanted to go over in more detail in executive session because it gets a little more legally and it's more of an attorney-client privilege conversation than it is a educational presentation. So are there questions that the board has on the topics that I went over?
Yes, then.
So Allison, explain to me, let's say okay. Yeah. So thank you for what you have given us. Here's my quandary. Let's say we are looking at an expulsion. So how do we make sure that the board has all the information they need to make a completely fair and just decision, but then have some of that withheld? That's kind of in a balancing act. I don't quite understand who all gets the input on that and how that's determined.
Okay, I think I'm on. Am I on? Okay, so if it's coming to you as the appellate body, at the point that you are the ones who are receiving the information to make a decision on whether the original decision should be upheld or not, then you should receive the information. But you should not be the ones who make the first decision if it's something that's going to be appealed to you. Does that make sense? Are you doing your process in that way? Or are you doing it initially presenting it to the board? Okay. And so the district may make a decision on the expulsion, and then they would come and present that case to you. And at that point, you should get the information necessary to make your decision. It's the way the statutes set it up. And I didn't write it, obviously, but I think the intent was to try and keep the process as local as they could so that it would have as much fair process as it could locally before it went to the courts or to another area. So, yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, Brad.
What do you see as the most litigated issue right now?
Or schools. So I think the most interesting issues right now, and it's not so much being litigated, although it will, is the interaction between parent rights and the rights of the school, and like how that plays out on a daily basis. And I guess I would say it's important that schools do the best they can for kids, right? What does this do for kids up here on the wall? It's also important to have respect for parents' rights and families' decisions in raising kids in a family the way they want to, and keeping kids safe and families together, all those things. And they're constitutional issues, which make it when I took constitutional law, I thought, oh my gosh, this is so squishy, right? Like, I also have a tax law degree, and I'm like, tax law is great because there's an answer, right? I mean, it may be hard to get to and you got to read a lot of stuff, but there's usually an answer. When you're in constitutional law, it's balancing these fundamental rights. And courts are all over the place on those decisions, frankly, depending on what part of the country you're in. So, one of the statutes that is still working its way through the legislature is the Senate File 117 that has, I brought a copy. Maybe I could grab it out of my bag so that I can remember what exactly it says. But there have been a couple of bills in the legislature right now on parents and kid issues. So there's currently a statute 142206 that provides for protection of parental rights, which is very Wyoming specific. And it talks about the liberty of a parent to the care, custody, and control of their child is a fundamental right that resides first in the parent. And that may have had pretty focused purpose in the beginning of making sure that, neglect and abuse cases weren't brought in cases where it wasn't right or the right fit. But it's definitely being expanded. House Bill 78 was an attempt to amend that statute and really expand the application of it, and it would have affected schools, I think. So it's a hot issue in our legislature and across the country. That bill died, I think today. And then there's another one, the Senate File 117, that is parents' rights in education, and it would create a new statute, basically. And it also would create some obligations for the State Board of Education and school boards, requiring you to adopt procedures and guidelines regarding student instruction and the provision of services associated with student health and well-being in accordance with the statute. And resolution of parent complaints would fall under the State Board of Education. We never have parent complaints, do we? I'm a parent. I sometimes complain too. But so this bill has a lot to do with parents making decisions regarding their children and what they're educated about. And just to make sure that there aren't kids in the room, it also talks about the sexual orientation and gender issues that schools and families have been facing. And so this is up in the air as we sit here right now. It's not decided, and it won't be decided for our state until the end of the legislative session, which we hit the halfway mark on, I think, today. So I think that's probably one of the more complex issues in education and on the legal and litigation side right now is how do schools and parents work together in a way that helps parents feel like their rights are being protected and doesn't overly burden schools in trying to teach kids. So probably a little more than you asked for, but I think that's it. So.
Any other questions? At this time, could I ask for a motion to go into executive session for, I guess, further legal advice or education under Western or Wyoming statute 16-4-405 A IX. Been moved and seconded to go into executive session to discuss legal advice under Wyoming's statute 16-4-405 A IX. All in favor? Say opposed? Motion carried.
Yes, so Mr. Chairman, I would recommend to the board the school calendar that is in the packet for the 23-24 school year.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the 2023-2024 school calendar on final reading. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. We'll move on to new business. Classified resignation. Brad?
I would recommend to the board the resignation of Christina Kessler as a bus route driver.
Move to approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve Christina Kessler's resignation as a bus route driver. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Classified recommendation. Brad?
Mr. Chair, sorry.
Oh.
Oh,
Do I need to excuse myself?
Yeah, if there won't be any, yeah, there won't be any discussion on it, so. Was there a motion?
no, I was, sorry. Yeah, I would recommend to the board
Okay,
the recommendation of Jennifer Johnson as a bus route driver.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded to recommend Jennifer Johnson as a bus route driver. And Jason, you're declaring
I will abstain, yes.
okay, conflict of interest. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Bid recommendation.
I do have a recommendation to the board for Bighorn. So this is the improved update microphone system in the boardroom here. And the bid proposal that I recommend to you is for $24,967.
Is there a motion to?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the bid proposal from Bighorn for $24,967 for microphones for the boardroom. Is there any discussion? Yes,
This will alleviate the
shut this one off, turn this one on and.
Yeah, yeah. Case in point. Yeah, so what this will do, this will give us, I think it gives us 24 channels. It will give us, 18 mics. There'll be the gooseneck mics, and then we'll have some up there. And, what we'll do is when he decides on that, we'll do a change order and we'll get the PTZ camera. So we can actually have 18 people talking at one time. So no one, but make sure you turn it off when you're not talking, just in case.
Is there a use for these mics when?
Yes, so what I'll do is I actually have a room in the elementary that I would like to move this to. So my plan is to do that, and then what I'll do is I'll keep these 4 extra classroom mics for the kids. These are what they use.
Okay. Is there any?
Oh,
other-
yes, and it's ARP3, correct? Or is it ESSER 2? ESSER 2, so it won't be district money. Won't be general money.
Any other discussion? Yes, Jason.
And I guess for a little better clarification, it's not microphones we're paying this kind of money for. It's a audio system
Well,
versus $20,000 for microphones. So
well,
That's true, but I'm telling you, man, microphones are $800-900. I ain't joking. They're expensive right now.
Wow.
any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Classified resignation.
Yes, so in your packet, I would recommend to the board, the resignation of Lisa Christensen in payroll. But just a change in the back there. I would like to ask permission to post. Just primarily because we are switching software systems. And as Angie and the district grow together, I think it would be wise that we at least see what's out there, both in-house and out. So I would like permission to post that position as well, which is different than stated in the packet.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded to accept the resignation of Lisa Christensen in payroll and post the position. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. We're down to administrators report. Tyler, since I didn't see you back there, I'll have you start first, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I might effectively yield my time to Sonia. I got a feeling she's going to cover a decent amount of things that all 3 buildings are probably going to talk about. It's probably as well as the sped department. So the only thing I had to tell you is we did get our interim data for YTOP, looked at it as a building last Friday. Sonia and Dottie helped put some things together for us so we could compare some things and make some plans for power hours and really just the next couple months before we take the real deal. So just kind of a good checkpoint for students and staff. And so Sonia has a lot better information than I do, but that's one of the things we did recently, and otherwise she'll cover it better. So if you guys have any questions for the middle school dance, when is it, guys? The 10th. Billy's gonna be there. Russ is coming. 6:30 to 8 Friday. See you guys there. Otherwise, that's it.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.
Karen?
Thank you. I just have a couple things. We wrapped up certifying the whole sped department and CPR last week. So the hospital helped us do that. We felt that that was a need just for some of the students we do serve. And then paras are just continuing their professional development on Fridays. They've been doing some training in behavior, and they'll finish out those sessions this spring. So that's all I have for you guys tonight.
Any questions for Taryn?
Okay,
Thank you. Angie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have anything at this time.
Okay. Any questions for Angie? Why we have her under mic? Thank you. Do we need to time you?
Maybe. No, I'm just kidding. All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. There was a couple things of data that I had CeeLo forward to you. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at it or just know that it's there for you to reference. So I was just going to talk through kind of how to read those and maybe what those mean. So the first one is the FastBridge math data. So the FastBridge is the benchmark kind of assessment that we take fall, winter, spring that kind of just gives, I guess, one little checkpoint. That's a lot of the information of how we determine kind of what supports our students might need for like title and additional time. For those grade levels that are kind of doing walk to math or kind of some math centers, that's an additional piece of information they use as well. So what I included is just the historical data. So this is our third year doing that assessment. So I just included the winter kind of in 2021, 2022, and then this winter 2023. So you can see just over across time, between whether it be kindergarten, first grade, they take a little different tests than second through fifth do. So that's why they're on two different tables. So you can just kind of see over the years, in general, in the middle of the year, different groups of kids. Are we about the same? Are we kind of improving? That kind of thing. As far as what the, I would say the kind of the scores that are listed there, just kind of give an estimate of should there be like what students are maybe are high risk at this point in time, what students are maybe low risk, and what students are at some risk. So that's kind of how that report lays out. And so these are the students, the percentage of our students who are at or above basically the 40th percentile in the nation is what that means. And so the color-coded diagonal lines are the relative same group of students. So if you wanted to know from one grade level to another grade level to another grade level, the test is adaptive. So it's not strictly within one grade level band of like types of questions that they take. So it kind of adjusts a little bit. And so you can see as a grade level, I say relative same group of students because I didn't disaggregate the students who have moved in or moved out. Usually there's a couple new ones between last year and this year. And so you can kind of see in general for the grade levels how they're doing if you look at the diagonal same colors. So that's what that says. On another tab, it just kind of says by numbers, like how many students were kind of in the above average, average, some risk or high risk, just to see how we're moving kids from the beginning of the year to the middle of the year. So as staff members in grade levels, we pay attention to those when we have our data meetings. So that was for the elementary FastBridge. So I will just kind of pause there. Does anybody have any questions about the numbers or how to read that?
Are we on the first one or the second one?
It's the second, whichever one you want.
Or I'm trying to figure this all out.
Smaller one that you can actually read.
Okay,
I
great.
think you might be
That's
able
good.
to
That's good. On the right one.
shrink it down.
For future reference, would you print those out for us? Because I left my phone out in the pickup, so. You know, when we're gonna discuss those, please.
So first grade reading and literature went from 91% to 69%. Is that the one we're looking at?
I think that's the.
Is it a different one?
That's the local common assessments. Or
Is that the local?
You're looking at, that would be my guess.
That's the next one.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay, there it is. I got it. Okay, I'm with her.
Okay.
And sorry, they're not the easiest to read at all. And when you do print them off and you try to put them on one page, they're very little, right? So yeah, very little. So the second one that I sent you is our local common assessment results. So these these are the kind of the results that we as teachers and teams, we create those assessments. We create those rubrics. We put them in the timeline that we feel best fit where instruction of our students are. And it's a growing process. They're aligned to the standards. We report out by the domain. So within every standard area, there's like little different subtopics, if you will. And so by those domains, that's what we report out on our district assessment system. And so this is what we're required to do by law, is have a district assessment system in all 10 content areas, K-12, just to show that, yep, we are aligned to the state standards. Yes, we assess in the state standards. Here's where our progress is. And so this is another tier when we look at data to see how are we doing on these assessments that are right here. And so the color coding, so there's different tabs for different buildings. So like when you look at your spreadsheet, there's one for elementary, one for middle school, and one for high school. And there's also color coding for Q1 versus Q2. So for example, if I am on the elementary page and I am looking at math and I am looking at, let's do first grade, numbers and operations in base 10. So the third column over, I see two different scores there. One is in blue, one is in green, or yellow, I mean. So what that indicates is basically our first grade students took a number and operations base 10 assessment in first quarter, and they took another one in second quarter. What those two scores might mean is they could be the same, some of the same standards. They don't necessarily represent exactly the same standards, because there's a subset underneath there, and you might assess part of them or one in one quarter and then others in another quarter. So they're not 100% comparable within each section. So for example, on second grade math, if you go clear over to data and measurement, there's a blue one that's 25% and then a yellow one that's 64%. So teams will look at that and say, which ones are we concerned about? Which ones are we not? We reflect on our assessment practices. Is it more of the teaching that we did, more of how we assessed it? Did we assess it in the right way? Do we need to go back and do some of these things? Like those are all discussions that we have afterwards. But those two scores essentially might mean once I might have assessed on making graphs, and once I might have assessed on actually doing some time, like telling time. So they may be two different skills, but still fall under the same category. So just know that they're not 100% comparable within the same domain. But it does give you an idea of kind of where we've scored, what the scores that teachers have kind of reported out on. And what we've asked teachers to do is to report out at least four different assessments somewhere throughout that year or that grade band, depending on what the standards are, to have at least, something represented in each domain area by the end of the year. For however the standards are written. Some standards are written by grade level specific, other standards are written within grade bands. So some of them might say K2, covered these things. So somewhere in K2, there has to be representation of those particular standards. So anyway, so you can kind of see some of the scores, some of them lower, higher, just those kind of things. So do you guys have any questions on that document, how to read it or some of those numbers?
Did that answer your question, Sean? Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I think the real key thing for a board is to understand that as a staff, there is a lot of data. There's a lot of adjustments that happen with individual students that either larger school districts or even some of the districts I just recently visited say, that's really nice, but how do you actually get these kinds of things together? So for your information, that's what the staff's breaking down, trying to make sure that everybody has the accommodations. And if they don't, if needs change, then what are we doing to change about that? For the veteran board members, you'll always remember this. It's more important that we're doing something with the data, not that you're just data rich and doing nothing with it. And so that's really probably the leading frustration piece in education right now is well, that's a lot of stuff. And it would help if you could, those charts are nice. Please don't take that wrong. But I think if you could just take 15, 20 minutes to sit in a PLC where they're breaking that down and knowing what the grade level teachers are doing, subject level teachers are doing, the resources behind that, it is pretty impressive and it is a lot of work. A lot of work.
No, not at all. The only other things that I would add then is we're doing some math trainings for our K2 teachers and our support services this week. And then in the next couple of weeks, we'll do some trainings just individual kind of based for our secondary teachers in math. So we have that. I just got back from a State Board of Education meeting with the curriculum directors with the standards. And so I will say, kind of as another highlight is, our science department is very highly revered within the state. So they took the input that we gave them and we'll see what happens with that. But the state board is moving forward with kind of that audit system of really looking at the standards, really looking at what's necessary. How do you kind of reduce the load, especially in terms of assessment, is kind of where that comes to kind of make sure that we're kind of freeing up some time for teaching the truly important things for whatever those committees think. So at the State Board of Education, we'll have a meeting on February 24th. And I know that will be on their agenda for the State Board of Education to decide whether to move forward with getting some informal public comment on the math and the science proposed new set of, they're not really a new set of standards, but just the structure a little bit different and how they're claimed. So I think one of the biggest changes that would make is our state assessment for YTOP would be very closely aligned to the standards that are chosen to be our performance standards. So, which is a nice thing for teachers. So, in districts to work through. And other than that, that's all I have for you tonight. Should have questions.
Jason?
Sonia, under the middle school, under the social studies, what is the technology literacy and global connections?
So without having, I don't have all the standards memorized, believe it or not, for all 10 content areas. So I would have to look that one up. I think if I'm not even going to take a guess at it without looking at it. But I do think that's more of the using multiple resources and just kind of making sure your source is accurate as far as one point. And maybe, do you have it?
Research is a big component.
Okay.
Being able.
Yeah.
Primary sources, secondary sources.
Yeah. So I think that's where that one comes from. But I would have to look that up.
Any other questions? Thank you, Sonia.
There are a ton of social networking websites, but one stands apart for a very special reason. This one saves lives. It's matchingdonors.com. Matchingdonors.com links living organ donors with people in need of kidney and other transplants. In the United States, 22 people die each day waiting for an organ transplant, most of them for kidneys. If you've ever considered becoming a living organ donor, or if you are someone in need of an organ transplant, visit matchingdonors.com, home of the greatest gift of all, the gift of life. Matchingdonors.com.
Randy?
Thank you. So like everybody just said, we just got done doing our week-long journey into data meetings. It does take us quite a while to do that because we also do individual learning plans for all the kids that might need some extra interventions required for language arts, but we also have started doing that in math. And Erin Pazinski, I won't put her on the spot tonight, but she is putting together the Acadians data, which is like FastBridge that we check math that we use to check reading. And so she's going to bring that to present to you, as well as some information on the K-3 literacy bill with those requirements and kind of where we are with that whole process. So just know that's coming down the pike. So but with that in mind, Brad kind of mentioned it, but last week we had visitors from Douglas School District out of Rapid City, not Douglas, Wyoming, but they brought a group of, I think there was 10 people. They said they were bringing 5 and doubled that and showed up at our door. So we welcome them, but they came specifically to see what we were doing with our language arts program. They came and looked at Walk to Learn, how we use our resources as far as paras and our programs, how we look at our data and respond to that. So it was pretty cool to have somebody come see and give us their feedback and ask lots of questions, and had several people say they would love to come join our team. So I thought that was a bonus. In addition to that, last week we had a meeting with Teton County to talk about those same kinds of things. They wanted to know what we were up to and how we were getting the scores that we're getting, particularly on Acadians, which Erin will explain more about that test in the future. But I think that's something to be proud of, that other districts, even in other states, are looking to us for direction. So also just letting you know, we started our intramural volleyball program in the evenings, or not evenings, but after school with our 4th and 5th graders. And we have 41 girls who went out. So that's a huge number. We had to kind of rearrange and pull some extra help in. So we were excited about that. And then we had Moms and Muffins, or not Moms and Muffins, Muffins in the Morning, we renamed it, for K2 students on Tuesday. And we had a really good turnout for that. We did it a little bit differently this year, so we weren't all crowded and didn't have that big massive line out front. And we'll do that again for 3-5 students in April. So, and then we're doing some training. Candace has been doing some training with our staff on working with trauma, not only trauma with our students, but trauma with our staff, and how to support each other through some tough times, because we've had a lot of that this year. And then she'll be expanding on that with students here next week when we meet on our early release. So that's where we are. And that's all I have, unless you have questions.
Any questions for Brandy? Thank you, Brandy. Bryce, yes, you're up.
Thank you. At the high school, just continuing on the theme of data. This Friday, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be resorting some kids who, through our math data from last year, as well as from the White Top interim this year, we're going to put them in some groups in our math department to help, I guess, work on the standards that they've been struggling a bit in. Sonia took a lot of time to break down some specific standards that kids are struggling with. And so then Mrs. Reed can tailor those lessons to them to see if that'll help with them and their performance on the White Top. So something new that we're going to try. And so we'll see how it ends up working for us. That was part of our school improvement plan that I'm sure you guys all read word for word when that came out. But that's something that we're going to try with that. And hopefully it'll be a positive result on our scores going forward. But you never know. And then second, I would just mention tomorrow, Taryn and I are going to Rapid City to recertify as CPI instructors. And so that's our nonviolent crisis prevention intervention training that we do with staff every year. And so that helps train staff to de-escalate situations before they become a violent situation. And then also train staff in a manner that if a situation would escalate to a high risk situation, some techniques that they could utilize to help themselves out in those situations. And so Taryn and I have to recertify every 2 years as the trainers, and then we meet with staff and do a refresher at the beginning of each year. So just a little bit about that program. I don't know if you know about that.
Anything, questions? Jason?
For the refresher, how many hours is that per year for the teachers?
So there's an online portion that they do. I believe it's an hour and a half to 2 that it takes them. And then we do an hour and a half training with the physical movements at the beginning of the year during our Black Days in August. So I'd say about 4 hours total. Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you, Bryce.
Thank you.
Bo, did you have anything? Okay. Brad, I guess we're up to you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So really the biggest scheduling nightmare is been a lot of conversation around why Weston One doesn't really offer a true virtual program. So in the last probably 4 months, what I'm actually trying to do is to bring a couple groups in, so at least we could compare them as far as programming and service. It really isn't a program that takes away from the face-to-face. This would basically be for those students that have distant traveling issues, health impaired. And then, as we all know, as safety concerns continue to go up in the United States towards schools, a lot of families just are a little less reluctant to have their children in public school. Right now, we do lose students that join other virtual programs. Both the programs that we hope to have presentations soon would be not only a district program, but they would be a state program. So you could actually pick up students. I think you all read the article in the paper with Weston 7's K-6 program, I believe is what it was. But these would be more like a K-12 kind of a program. And so really working on that. And then the other thing, trying to schedule is the crisis team meeting along with the new Chief Bowles, who is not with us tonight. But there is a gentleman in the back that I have spent more time this week with than I did the whole senior year of high school that he was supposed to attend. But with that to the side, I would tell you, one of the things that you always think about success, and we've talked about this over the years when we talk about standards and scores and how do young people grow up. It has been nice in watching 3 of the readers. All 3 of the parents represented there at one time were high school students. So you get to watch them as young parents. And then, of course, now watching the gentleman in the back in his duties. Sometimes the Y-top scores are very important for us to reflect and to grow upon. But when you really look at student success, it's what they go out and can do and contribute to others. And so I just thought that was sort of a classic week that we did learn each other through. And I do mean learn because it was quite a process. But those are really the biggest topics. I really don't have any House bills or Senate bills to tell you to watch. The big one tonight, superintendent wise, was the voucher. How much money local districts could lose in the voucher. And I ended up getting busy, and I don't know where that one actually, I don't even know if it landed or if it survived. But anyway, there's a chance that we could lose some money there. But again, we're at the halfway point. Nothing to really panic over there, but there are a lot of different educational topics on the table. So with that, Mr. Chair, if you have any questions, I would try to entertain those as well.
Jason?
Brad, so how does that virtual, how is that differ from when we were through COVID and we had the systems in the classrooms and stuff? How is that different than what we can just do through that portion of it?
Okay, so I think the biggest difference is the burden on the classroom teacher. So when we went into COVID, you took people that really were trained face to face, and then all of a sudden you throw them into the virtual world. Now, those staff members that really had that tech background, it was pretty fluid. So these are really two different kinds of silos. You'd still keep your face-to-face piece, but on the virtual side is statewide, not just district-wide. It would be a statewide kind of a system. So for those that really do not want the face-to-face interaction, and I'm going to say we're somewhere between 13 and 26, about 30 students a year that we lose. That might actually help captivate those. The health one is very self-explanatory. Distance is only one of those things that, as I'm talking to the guy that had a heck of a time getting here, you would understand. So if I'm 75 miles one way, that virtual option really could offer some things that would be a little bit easier and safer. The growing one that I see right now exponentially nationwide is some of these virtual schools just absolutely multiply in numbers when you look at, school shootings, for example. That's the leading one. But it's not just that. It's how comfortable are you as a parent with the public school setting. And so I think it could offer some opportunities there. I think there are some possibilities of financial gain. I'm not going to disagree with that, but it's really not the reason I'm pitching it at all. It just seems to be a growing topic. I have more and more parents reach out. It seems like every year. So I just think it's worth kicking the tires, and it's nice if you have two programs, because then you really can compare your apples and oranges and, how is it offered? And the other thing is that I think is very important to us is it's not perceived as the easy way out where you just stay in your jammies. It really does come with you are attending, you are participating, and you are working towards our diploma. So it has to line up to what we're doing face to face pretty close. It's just it's pitched through the computer. That answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
This is Paul.
So is this gonna be based in Wyoming, or is this gonna be another out-of-state thing that we do through the internet?
So really the reason they're pitching it is they want a foothold in Wyoming. And it would involve the same PTSB. They have to be Wyoming certified teachers. It would be the Weston One virtual school. The heavy lift though really is more their piece, their counseling, their IEPs, the whole gamut is the heavy lift is on them. So if you think about, I'm going to use the number of $15,000 per student, a bulk of that $15,000, probably 60 to 80%, depending on which one you go with, goes with that vendor, because they're the ones that are really putting the resources forward. There's a little bit that stays with the district because there are still some things on Power School, graduation checkpoints that all the state testing still has to occur. You just don't walk away from those things. And it's a great big learning curve for me. And I've got to tell you, I am not a virtual learner. I've tried to take one or two classes and they're just miserable. Well, you see me try to run that. So you can imagine, but there are some young people and adults that really is their delivery method that they're good with, they're comfortable with, and they do have success. So that's sort of what we're looking at.
Jason?
So I guess, so when it comes to assessments and scores and a student falling behind, then does that fall on the district or does that fall on the virtual school who's responsible for the failures or the gains of a student?
So that's the good news, bad news, right there. So those test scores, as I understand it, would be reflected in Weston One's Y-top ACT data, dropout data. Help me, I know there's more than that. So there is that. Now, on the other side, it's not for everybody, but they claim, their big claim is their teachers through their progress monitoring, no different than our teachers, there is that communications that the student is getting behind, what is needed, those kinds of things. And then in the agreement, which I think is very important to us, we address comes where, who gets to get into the program, and more importantly, if you are struggling, then maybe face-to-face is your only other option, because we've tried to pitch the ball the other way. Or in this case, there are other virtual programs that many of them might be in, and they just go back to that virtual program as well.
And I guess the other thing is, where would staffing issues, if there anything that needs to come in front of the board, and disciplinary type thing, how does that work then?
So again, that would be in the agreement. But the payroll and those kinds of things, the reason why the bulk of the ADM money goes to them is that becomes their business. So they're in charge of their certification, just like we are for the face-to-face. They would be in charge of insubordination kinds of things or whatever that would occur. All of a sudden, instead of the kid not wanting to attend the class, the teacher doesn't log on. That becomes their issue. That doesn't become our issue. We were hoping that maybe we could build a little bit of flexibility for example, let's say either we have a program that they don't, or let's use our current math situation at the high school. Something happens, is there a way that could hurry up and fit in, which is basically a virtual, we're modified virtual. So could that help with staffing patterns, or could it not? Again, those are big questions for us. I'm hoping that there's some flexibility. So instead of teachers having to maybe go part-time because of low student numbers, maybe they could do part-time face-to-face, part-time virtual. I think scheduling, time of the schedule is going to be probably your biggest challenge there, because the virtual kids would have very similar to a schedule that we would have here. Although I know some of them that I've watched, it's more of a flipped classroom where the teacher records themselves, teaches the lesson, then sets out some kind of a practice, and then asks the individuals to try. And then if they have problems, then they log on and work face-to-face. We did quite a bit of flipped classrooms. Well, heck, the guru was right back there, come to think of it. And so, you could almost use that in a context where the coach is gone on Friday and not all the kids are gone. So some are in the classroom. So it has that possibility. I think the range of things that it offers is a huge potential to grow. I think our choice is really finding a company that best meets our student needs and those families that want to go that direction.
So can we just go take a peek? Because isn't Lusk, aren't they doing that already and have been for quite a while? I mean, there's some places around us that are doing that. So, we could find out flexibility wise or however they're doing it. Or have we? Or...
Well, and I think the biggest thing is when the vendors are ready, I think it's very important for them to come and present, so not only you can see and ask, but those that are going to attend via Zoom have some feedback, because I think it's huge to let the parents have a little bit of say, because they've already made that decision. And so they have better knowledge of what works and what doesn't work, and the snags or hurdles that they've had. So I think if they could have that possibility as well. I mean, again, this is for next fall. We're not rushing. But I think at the high school, the students that have, approached me just really like the idea of the self-paced piece of it. And for those students that we have lost virtually already, I know in listening to their frustrations with programs, I'm not saying Lusk is one of them, but is that feedback piece and that connectivity piece and who is reaching out. I think that is really big for those students that would be working in isolation. Or in my opinion, isolation. That's probably an opinion because they may, I mean, truly as a family, you had 4 or 5 students, that might just simply be a lot more better opportunity for the family setting.
Sean.
I just want to go back to last meeting. Did you have a chance to visit with law enforcement? I mean,
We're gonna have, I was gonna bring that up under future agenda items.
oh, were you? Okay, never mind. I'm jumping.
Because,
Yes, and I'll address that when it comes up.
Okay.
Anna,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So do they do like the interim or local common assessments? So we would have data on, and we're not just totally surprised when they've gone through the year and taken Y top and, oh no.
I do not know that answer. I think that's one that when we first started talking about that piece was some of the questions that we had is how well does it line? What happens if they go back and forth? Because, you could end up, I mean, we already end up with that right now with students that just simply move. So what would that look like and how does that facilitate the student need? I'm assuming that they have some checks and balances. I do not know that for sure.
any other questions for Brad? We'll move on to future agenda items. And I guess to address yours, Sean, the police chief will be here at the next meeting. Is that correct? He's invited to be here to speak to us on safety and some other issues. And if you
Yeah,
have
so
questions.
we spent a lot of time on some safety issues, and there's 2 pieces to this. So one piece is to really bring back since COVID, I got really bad on the crisis team piece, which really involves everybody in their working pieces. So it's public health, it's Homeland Security, it's the Children's Center, it's transportation and how that works. In visiting with Jared in the back, trying to get more visibility as their time allows and those kinds of things. But I do know that the new chief definitely would like to visit with the board on some of our practices, maybe some procedures, things of that nature, because our world just gets more and more treacherous every day. And it's just about virtually impossible to keep up. But we do have some really good systems in place. The problem is when we don't use those systems. And so as we talk about safety, you really do get into that convenience conversation real quick. So I don't think anyone's opposed to, being seen. I think they all sort of like being on school grounds, watching the kids and those kinds of things. But I do know that the direction of at least our nighttime, our schools are definitely a little bit more open and probably present what they see as a pretty dangerous environment when most of us go home. During the day, you have a lot of eyes, you have a lot of resources. Once about 4 o'clock, 4:35 hits, it gets to be pretty limited. So yeah, we'll continue to have those conversations, and then I think it's important that the new chief gets to meet you, and then you guys can ask some questions. I know indirectly as he builds his team, I think he has a vision for more of a like resource officer, school resource officers. But I think he's going to find himself in the same situation we are. Staffing patterns are difficult at best. And really, when you talk about a school resource officer, it's a skill set, but you really have to have that personality, you know, that somebody that students are comfortable with. Students are going to say, you know, hey, here's a heads up kind of a deal. Because they're never going to be enough of them to be in the right place at the right time. And I don't want to give people a false sense of security, you know, just because you have this individual, all your problems walk away. It's not that simple. But I think we continue to learn, and we will continue to reflect on those kinds of things. So I'm hoping at the next board meeting, you'll get to meet the new chief, and Mr. Engel can come back and he can give the sheriff's perspective, because I know he knows schools and he knows kids as well. So we'll work with we really will follow their lead on a lot of the safety stuff. We are not trained safety people. I think we're pretty obedient, and I think we're all about keeping people safe. But a lot of times we need the experts to sort of guide us in that area.
Is there anything else for future agenda items? I ask that you please fill out the board evaluation, and we'll go over that probably during the retreat, whenever we pick a date.
I have a quick board report.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
That's okay. If this will be short, the Wyoming Educators Benefit Trust Board meets next Wednesday in Cheyenne. And it will all be about renewing stop loss contracts and rate setting. So we'll have a long, involved, intense meeting about that. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anything else for future agenda items? I guess if you think of something before the next meeting, please get a hold of Brad or CeeLo or myself. We'll move on to coaches' salaries. Before you, Brad, you want to explain that, please?
I think I'll let Angie.
Okay.
Is it on?
Yep.
Can you hear me? Okay. So I took our current extra duty contract amounts. That would be the first column. And then I increased the head coaches by $1,000, assistant by $500, and the aides by $250. So that's your second column. And then $2,000, $1,500 for the third column. And then I tallied up how many positions are, I put required, but I guess are what are currently in that position. Multiplied it over. So then you have the current total for those positions by the same added amounts. And then you'll see the totals at the bottom, which really give the, what it would cost if we did raise our coaches extra duty, or any extra duty contract actually is on here. So it gives you the total for the current, and then total what it costs by each increments. It was just an idea to go with, to discuss or look at. Then I believe you should have one from Converse County and Crook County, what their extra duty contracts are, contracts look like, their costs.
Teresa?
And I guess, I don't know if this is for you, Brad, I guess when evaluating this, is this something that we need to look at from a 2A, 3A, from a school size? Or from a budgetary size? I guess, how do we need to look at that? All of the above?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to look at it. So especially for the new board members, one of the things that we have done primarily the last 6 years is when we try to increase rates, we try to make sure that the increase is, or the wealth is spread across the village. So instead of just saying, you know, teachers only get this amount and we're not going to do anything with hourly people. Coaches, we're going to address this, but we're going to freeze everybody else. What Angie gets to do is really that big picture. And I think it's fair to look at 2A, 3A because it can give you some contrast. But if you ever notice, everyone likes to use Converse when you're talking about superintendent salaries. I think that's really important because the superintendent in Gillette tends to make a little bit more than most 3A superintendents. So you got to be really careful with that kind of analysis.
You said Converse. but you
Oh,
said
Gillette, I'm sorry. So, well, no, Converse would be good, but it's got to be Converse 2, not 1. So, you know, everyone likes to use that kind of a thing, and we can afford just about anything. We can't afford everything. So when we got together, one of the things we tried to do is we said, if we could get our teaching base up and we can get our hourly people more money, that will help us recruit and retain at the same time. We did not touch the coaches because in that case, most of the coaches in-house, we thought if we could get that base to 50, they would make a lot more than just simply putting $1,000 to the head coaching salary. Now, I do think this is a good way to help retain people. Recruiting of coaches, I think, is a different kind of a culture because a lot of times it's just not the money. It's a sacrifice that they're going to have to make from the money that they're going to lose other places. So I think when we look at this, we have to, number one, see where our carryover is, where our budget is. We need to know where the legislative people are. The biggie, Trustee Mantaviji just hit on it. I mean, if healthcare takes a 20% increase, that changes our conversation. Now, if we're back at 5, and we get some state money, our carryover is good, then we really can start looking at those things. So I think what you do is you take this, you try to fit it to our needs, our budget needs, do the best that we can for our people that take care of our kids. But you really do that when you have all the budget pieces together, because if you just do it isolated, I think it could cause some discomfort down the road. At this time, I think that's the only way I think you can look at it. I would encourage the board strongly not to use a percentage. I think you can use money. You can go 1,500. It's easy to calculate. You can see that. I think if we would start using percentages, and a district our size, I don't want to see us have to start to either do a reduction in force or a reduction in programming based on something that we tied ourselves to financially that we may not be able to sustain. So I really did, that was an attorney way of asking your question. I really don't know, but there's a lot of moving pieces to that budget.
So would this be better for the budget team meeting? And when we put the budget, this is be a better discussion. This is just information right now.
Yes, correct. Just
Is that okay?
just something to
with the
put
board?
out there to look at.
Right. Is that okay with the board? Okay. Thank you, Angie, for putting that together. And we'll bring it back up during the budget conversations. the Vercati, is that right, Vercati? Verkada? Okay, guest management system. I like Vercati better.
Did everyone get a chance to see the information that I sent on that? Was there any questions or anything, or our gentleman that likes to show up did stop and talk to me. He had some nice things to say, but he said he did want to talk about it. So it is what it is. I don't know what to tell him. I think I said it twice this week that my loyalty is kind of the district. It's to the employees, the 773 kids. If I can put something out there that protects us, I think it's a win-win. But again, it's not my decision. That's why I gave it to you guys.
Brad?
So, Mr. Chair, I do believe this would be something that I think the crisis team would definitely chime in on. Again, you're relying on a federal and a state database that's already been made. So I think it could help us. I'll use the example. Let's say Brandy's getting ready to head to Milo, and all of a sudden Tina comes out of the crowd and says, geez, I really would like to volunteer. I think that could really work quickly as a fast background check, not the big background check, but I think it could even help you in your coach's realm. Somebody that wants to volunteer, you could run it through that. If they wanted to be an assistant coach, head coach, and you're going to work through PTSB, which could be up to 6 to 8 weeks, we'll get there. But I do think it could provide a pretty good resource for us right here. I do know some people, some of the problem that I think people have with it is the invasion of privacy. I don't know exactly what that means, but I've heard it, and I don't know if you guys have heard that on the street as well. But truly, if I'm just coming in as a visitor, I shouldn't have to present my driver's license to you. I shouldn't have to go through this system. I'm a parent, I have kids, that kind of a deal. I guess that's one side of the argument. The other side of the argument is as Bo just stated, I don't know if we can do enough to keep people safe or enough to keep people feeling safe. That those are two big challenges in front of us. It just is, and it's daily, it's hourly. Heck, it's on the buses, it's on a road trip, it's everything that we do. We try to keep people safe, and sometimes I think we're pretty fortunate, and then other times, I think we have been fortunate. I mean, we've been very blessed that way, but sometimes it's not always very popular.
Oh.
And another thing this thing will really do, even if we don't want to use that piece, just last week they came out with, we can use it for tardies and late slips and stuff like that. It's an easier way of tracking our students in that actual database. It'll store that so we can run reports and whatnot instead of showing everyone the pink book of who was tardy.
So do we want to put this on the board agenda for the next meeting with your recommendation?
If we could, and then I could also share it with the crisis team. What day was it? 21st of this month as well. I think it would be something that they could really provide the board some insight with as well.
Okay, is that okay with everybody? Okay, we'll put it on. Yes, go ahead.
So what happens with like those? I mean, is this something that you would use for parents to come into, we would use for parents to come into the building with as well? Or because some people do have children in the building and have a right to be there. but would be flagged. So how,
Yeah, but that's true, but that's already.
I mean, I'm just asking the question.
No, it was a good question.
So that I know.
That's why I brought it to you guys. There's some gray area there. There is.
Jason?
I think some of that, Tina, will fall under court orders and things like that. I'll just leave. Yeah, some of that will fall under court orders and what, I mean, there's very, very specific guidelines of what they can do, can't win. Absolutely. And that is dictated by the court. So yes.
Bo?
Well, it could, and really it's something we could talk as an A team if we decide to enforce it, how we really. To me, I think it's just visitors that are going to be in the building should scan it and go in it. I guess I don't know. What do you guys, if someone's just in there waiting for a kid, I can't imagine we need to scan it, do we? I would say if you're actually going in the class, I was thinking more like contractors and stuff like that, that more outside people that are coming from different towns is more what I was thinking, but there's a lot that can go into it. I think we just got to figure out the guidelines that we
Well,
need to put in.
if you, I guess, Brad, if you would talk to the A team and the crisis team and bring back a recommendation on how we work it, and we don't have to vote on it next time either. We could put it off for discussion so everybody can get informed.
So.
Okay, that way we can get a good foundation to board. Is that okay, Jason? Oh, go ahead.
Now, will that fall under the national database or we'll say that?
It was in that paperwork and I can't honestly remember right now.
So.
I think it does federal and state if I remember.
Yeah, the way I read it is it feeds off of two different programs. So it's no different than the app one in the state. That's the state one. And then there's the federal archive as it reads off of, as well as is my interpretation of that.
Well, I guess that goes back to, I think what Tina was asking is Uncle Bob from Kansas comes down, is that going to flag, is that something we should know about, that kind of thing. So that, again, that definitely is something we need to look at.
What if Uncle Julio is from the border shirt?
It's, oh boy. Okay, we'll have more discussion on that next time. Paul, I didn't see you. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna state for the record, I hate technology. And if I look at a credit card machine, I can break it. And with the way that the internet acts sometimes, would this be hot wired to where it wouldn't crash or go down? Or is this just like everything else where there is the potential that you could just be locked out and the system won't work?
Yeah, so it is Wi-Fi based. So truly what it is. So what we would end up doing is, they are actually iPads, with the software on it. We would tie those to our WCSD one network. So it's not the guest network. So it would be our secondary network that we tie, Chromebooks and all that to. Yeah, as long as your Wi-Fi is up, you're good.
Okay.
But I mean, honestly, that's a lot of stuff. It's on battery backups and everything else. It's just, it goes down, same with our cameras too. We lose network, they're gonna go down.
Jason?
Mr. Chair, when we get further into this, looking into this, is that something we may need to get council to set in on too, just to get some feedback from that perspective when it comes to, certain rights and things like that, because obviously things were brought up and were said. So I guess I would like to maybe see if that's something that they should weigh in on. Yeah.
Okay. We will.
A big number of schools use Raptor. And I think right now Crook County's starting to use this one too. So this particular one, and Raptor's the exact same way. The people that split off from Bricata were Raptor, and they were also Meraki. So they kind of did a little combo of each. So a good number of districts already have this in place. But no, I think it's a good idea. I don't see why Scott can't look at the contract and look at what it does.
Okay. We'll bring it back next to the next board meeting. Has everybody got a date for the board retreat?
You have to bring a date?
Well, if you want one, I guess, yeah. Or a day we can meet.
March ones were my favorite.
And time wise, what are you talking about there? Like, are you talking all day, days?
Oh, this is for 2 days? I don't know, just one day, just one day. Whoa.
A full day or?
I think it'd be pretty much a full day. Yeah, we might not start until, I guess we can start anytime we want to.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Well, and the reason I ask is because I think you said the 21st is that group meeting. But we also have that crisis team, but we also have that as one of the dates for this. So that's why I was asking.
Okay.
March
March 2nd's regional.
March 2nd is regional.
March 2nd is also a new school board members in meeting. So,
What is?
yeah.
Anything but the 23rd for me.
So February 21st and 23rd is out.
That was all 3 days there, though, that were thought, right?
Well,
But we don't really want to do a board meeting after dinner.
Yeah.
All day long.
no.
Please mark off.
And probably next week, the 13th and 14th. Well, the 14th wouldn't be a good day. Well, that's when you bring your date.
And I'm
Yeah.
leaving, yeah.
So that's probably out. So that leaves us the 1st and 2nd of March.
I would say the 2nd is out with Reaper.
But you said that that's a new,
There's a new Zoom for new school board members on the 2nd too.
and you were gonna,
Well, like Jason said, I can walk around with my phone and look stupid. I'm good at that.
But March 1st is yes.
March 1st will be fine.
March 1st.
Wednesday, March
We're
first.
staying March.
Wednesday,
1st.
March 1st.
okay.
Yeah. Cool.
What, March 1st, what time do you want to start?
Anything after 8 o'clock.
Well, do we have an agenda? So maybe you could give us an idea from that.
What would you like to, I mean,
Quite a list, start out.
Start at noon.
Usually, in the past, if there's like, say 4:30, even 5, have pizza.
can't have pizza, can we? Are you still weighing in? Oh, no pizza. We gotta have salad.
The next day. Yeah.
So
the big question is if you want to do some board governance with, Rod Kessler said that he would be available. So there's that piece, there's the safety piece, the evaluation piece. That's not all of them.
And we can do the evaluation at a different time. We don't have to do it then. I mean, we could do it, have a half hour early before a board meeting or something and do it then.
And usually if I think most of the board governance stuff is either 4 to 6 hour kind of a snippet. If you wanted to try to do it in 2, we could. I probably should visit to see if there is a trainer available at that time and date.
We have another meeting in February. So if you have something that you would like to see at the retreat, I guess send the information to CELO and we can get it on that agenda so we know how long a day we're gonna have to have.
Yep.
How would that be? Okay. And then the University of Wyoming president visit.
Yeah, just, this is my other hat, so I'm gonna switch real quick. So, on March 14th, President Seidel and crew will be in Newcastle. They would like about 20 minutes to 30 minutes with our junior, senior class. So Mr. Hoffman's gonna set that up. And then there'll be a venue that I'm assuming will be out at the lodge later that evening, just something for you to put on your calendar if you would like to meet President Seidel, or if you have any questions or interest in the university and its programming.
Okay.
What time is that? It's not a conflict of interest because I didn't make any money. What? I don't know that yet. Well, yeah, we do. For the juniors and seniors, it's gotta be.
125 to 2. If we need it longer, you know, if we need to mess with it.
That's
kind of
that's the open spot at the school. And then I'm assuming are 4 or 5 o'clock to 7. Similar what they did with The World Needs More Cowboys, when they recognized Mike Farnsworth from the refinery. I'm assuming it'll be similar to that.
Okay. Last thing that I have on my agenda is an executive session to discuss personnel.
One more thing, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry. I guess just for clarification, any colleges are welcome to come and.
Sure.
I just wanted to make that clarification that.
Truly, just so the board knows, we still allow all representation of the armed forces.
Right.
As well. So just last week, just last week, we had a young man that is finishing basic, and he came back to basically set up a table and visit with his peers on joining the Marine Corps. So we still do open that up. Ideally, it works best at lunch. That's a better, open venue for students. But yeah, it's not just the university. Absolutely not.
Now I do. There's been a request for an executive session to discuss personnel under Wyoming State 16-4-405. Lalai. Is there a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to go into executive session under that state statute. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.